For joining us this evening. This is a regularly convened Greer City Council meeting, but we are opening this evening with a public hearing. So I will call the public hearing to order. As you'll see if you've got a copy of the agenda tonight, we will call the regular meeting to order a little bit later on as we move past the public hearing. For the purpose of the public hearing, this is notice of a public hearing for the Greenville County Program Year 2024, the annual action plan on behalf of the City of Greer. The City of Greer participates in the Greenville County Community Development Block Grant Program and the Home Investment Partnerships Programs funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. It is the Greenville County Redevelopment Authority that is preparing its annual action plan for the 2024 program year. And an in-person public hearing is held in City Hall this evening for the purpose of oversight and discussion into regards to those funds and funding. Ms. Ima Wamadou joins us this evening to lead us in that discussion, and I know she has at least one member of her board that joins us as well. We welcome you to the Greer City Council meeting and look forward to information. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. City Council members, thank you for having me. I have here with me one of our board members, Mr. White. Thank you for being here. So it's always an annual meeting. We'll come here. It seems like it's been a year already, where we come to talk to you about their plans for the upcoming fiscal year and basically about the funds we get from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Just a little caveat to disclaimer as well is we don't have the actual numbers, but we work off from our current year. But we've been informed that the approval is in place. So they are making all the entitlement allocations and we should be hearing from them sometime in April. So they feel there's not going to be a lot of change, maybe a few hundreds between CDBG and home funds. So I'm going to talk about the specific funds that will be coming to your city, which is the community development block grants and home funds, as well as the program income as well. Program income usually is proceeds on things that we've invested in the project or people we've funded or rehab projects or even new projects sold. They come back to you as program income based on that particular fund that it was used. And then we'll talk about what you plan to do for this year as well. The annual action plan is yearly completed and is a proposal that tells HUD what we're going to do with the three major funding sources that come to the county. But for this public hearing, it's just going to be CDBG. But we also get emergency solutions grant. The reason I'm not talking about it here is it's something we use throughout the county. It's not for any particular municipality. Anybody can use it. We set aside about 60% of that funds for shelter providers, helping them with their outreach and shelter programs. And we also set aside some funding for what we call prevention and rapid rehousing, preventing homelessness. So people that are literally homeless or at risk of homelessness can have their rent assistance, things, utility payments done with our program. So we can actually use this fund in the city of Greenville, even if they're also an entitlement community, but they don't get that particular fund. And the 2024 really starts July 1 of this year, 2024. And ends June 30th, 2025. And this year also happens to be the 5th year of our 5-year plan. So next year, by the time we come to you, we will have gone through the communities, conducting a needs assessment with the residents of different communities, have different meetings, and then share some of the feedback we receive from your residents. But I can bet you that affordable housing is still going to be very high on the needs. What is community development block grant and what can you do with it? That's a funding that has been in existence since 1974. But it's also a fund that you can use for several things. It goes from housing to infrastructure to social service programs, economic development programs, demolition, you address slum and blight. But you must make sure that 70% of that funds are used to address low and moderate income family. But I can tell you that historically over the years, we have always used close to 90 plus towards addressing low and moderate income needs. And it also must meet one of those three objectives, which is, of course, low and moderate income, slum and blight, addressing urgent needs as well. Like I said, during COVID, before we got COVID funds, that was very, very useful for us to start the program, helping residents avoid homelessness. Home is home, housing, either homeownership, rental, home buyers program, first-time home buyers providing financial assistance for people to buy their homes, or homeowners helping seniors or any household with a rental assistance. We have different programs to serve that as well. These are some of the projects we build all over the county. I'd like to really share an analysis of the funds you have. Of course, the 2024 is proposed based on the fact that we're using our current grant allocation. So the final number you got in 2023 slightly increased because the 2022 CDBG was 107 plus. You can see when we finally got their numbers close to spring, May time, you did increase in CDBG funds. And so for this year, starting, if we get the same funding level, you will get $114,994,000. Your program income also increased. You have over $90,000 projected, received. So we're working on received, not projected. So at the end of last fiscal year, we had that. This is what we have. Home program income was a slight decrease, so it's kind of pro rata basis. Everybody got that slight little decrease in allocation. But your home program income also increased, actually more than your home grant. So proposed, the projected for 2024, if we receive the same funding level, your home program income stays, as we've noted, is about you will be receiving $779,778 for the year. The two sections of the CDBG rental and home rental, we're not putting as part of the program income, but it is something we anticipate that you'll receive. But they will kind of net the rental because those funds are set aside for rental reserve. So they'll not be used to reprogram any other thing except set aside for your rental reserve. And of course, this came about from the CDBG, the PIs we received that we knew we can set aside from the rentals that we've received, and we'll put it back again to make sure the houses are kept up to date. This is your proposed allocation. Pretty much everything of the home and home PI will be going towards new construction. And of course, we intend to put it towards the Fairview project that we're currently building. You'll see some pictures on the progress of the project. We've set aside some funding, about $194,000 plus, towards any infrastructure or facility improvement project that you may have. Your demolition increased about $76,000, almost plus $76,000, about 10% of the grant. And of course, your sub-recipient is set at that $60,000 you've held for quite a while. You did increase it, almost doubled it a couple of years ago. We still receive requests way more than $60,000, but it's a funding that is a threshold that we cannot exceed in the county. Can't put more than 15% of the total funds, CDBG funds. You have some funds as well for facade improvements and economic development. That will basically, the ED loan will be able to help at least one startup, new small business. Facade will be able to help close to, we're doing $5,000 per. But we're looking to see if we can increase it a little bit because we know the cost of improvement and things and materials have increased. So if we do make any change to the program, we will let you know. I also use this opportunity to talk about the different programs that we have. One of the things is GCRA, being the administrator, also develop affordable housing. And we also got finance partners projects, rental projects, and housing homeownership projects. We have a lot of LIHTC developers that we have funded using not just home funds, but also affordable housing funds. We really see that this is a way to increase affordable housing. And it's got financing. Sometimes it's about maybe $50,000 or $60,000 or $100,000 of your home funds. But it's been close to more like 500 or 600 of affordable housing fund towards those projects. And most of them have gone like some having a maximum of 60% AMI max. And with the Home ARP fund that we came here last year, we've been able to actually provide that, and it could further reduce not just 50% AMI, but coming down to 30% AMI. The Home App, something I need to mention as well, is it has helped us when we rolled out a program with our partners. Greer Relief is one of the agencies working with us in this area. It's been helping a lot of families. You'd be surprised that even after COVID, you think it's just COVID, a lot of people are still earning the income, it's not enough to meet the rental in the community. Greenville County's rent, not just homeownership, has really increased. So that has helped a lot of households, prevent them from being homeless. In 2 months, when we rolled it out, the first recipients we gave the money to, give them $200,000. In 2 months, close to 90 families were assisted from being homeless. And that has increased. So right now we have 3 partners. We have Greer Relief in this area. We have Greenville County Human Relations. We have Salvation Army. Now we're going to have United Housing Connections that will be focusing on families, children in school that are homeless. And we talked about their first-time home buyers. We have an investor program where we actually provide funds to landlords. So small, you own 1 or 2 properties and you need to rehab it, but we don't want you to pass the cost to the tenant. We do have a program for that. We provide up to $25,000 to small landlords or property owners with smaller number of units. The owner-occupied units repair program we have, which is for the seniors of persons living with disability, we provide up to $20,000. Actually can go to 25. The first 10 is complete grant, the others are forgivable. But for households that are not seniors or living with disability, it's a loan, but it's a small interest loan. And most of them are not really paying up to $100 per month. The idea is to keep our housing stock up to date. The last 2 programs, which is the rental assistance and the rental rapid rehousing, I talked about ESG, and now the Home App is also helping to implement those 2 programs. And I'll focus on the Fairview projects that we have in Greer. We've been very proud of this project and the partnership we have with the city. It's been amazing. This is going to be 33 complete when it's completed. And it's going to be in 2 phases. We started phase 1 of the vertical build. We were lucky enough that at the time we started the infrastructure, we were able to get more funds from the county as well to help us complete all of the infrastructure at that time. So now, those first phase, which is 14 units, 4 units, 2 of them 8, and then 7. So 3 buildings. We intend to make sure these first 14 units will be available to families that ain't up to 80% AMI. We're not exceeding that amount at 80%. We want to keep it low and moderate. We actually intend to set aside some for 50% AMI. Most people feel that 50% is hard for the homeownership, and we understand how it's been right now. We're going to put a lot of subsidy to make this possible. We'll be informing our marketers the pricing and all that. So we're working through all that to make sure we provide that number of subsidy to make it available. And it's going to be staggered, so you don't know who is 50 or 80 or 60 or 70% AMI. So based on your income will be based on the subsidy that we'll provide. So pictures of some of those. Still on the exterior. There'll be a playground as well. So it's about 1,300, almost 1,350 square feet, 3 bedroom, 2 baths. We'll make sure that at least 2 of those are handicap accessible. This is basically a listing of all the things we talked about, your pie chart on what you're going to be using the funds for. So those are all the demolition facility improvements, your sub-recipients, facade. One thing I did not mention is we have the EPA grant. We received $1 million of EPA money for EPA assessment grant. So that fund will be available to every municipality under our jurisdiction, promoting, ensuring, trying to help and see how we can help do phase 1, phase 2, or even limited phase 3 of properties, brownfield properties in the municipalities. So property owners, potential developers can contact us. This is going to be free to them. They don't have to pay for those. So it's something we'll intend to do. And of course, some of the, it's not a cleanup, it's assessment. Just they know that. But it's also going to give us opportunity to pick a couple of what we call the redevelopment planning of the assessment part of the funds. So this is a 5-year grant. We just received it, executed it by the end of last year. Your sub-recipients' recommendations are here. The summer program, we recommended $7,000. They asked for $7,000, they received $7,000. The senior program is $3,000. Greer Relief, they asked for $28,490. We recommended that same. Greer Community Ministries with their homebound, they requested $20,000. We recommended $15,000. Creative Advancement, they requested $20,000. We gave them $65,000 plus, so a total of $60,000 for the CDBG. Small business loan, like I said, up to $25,000. We're not a bank as long as you retain or create a Loma job. And of course, your passion for what you're trying to do. This is basically the schedule that we have. So waiting for the municipalities. It's my last public hearing in all the municipalities, and comments will still be received all the way up to middle of May. So feel free. We have a contact where people can send their comments or questions or anything before we send it to our board and then the county council. We'll have a general public meeting again for everybody else, everybody in Orning-Corp area. And then it goes before the county finance committee and the full county in submission to HUD. Thank you, Mayor.
Council, the floor is open for questions or comments or discussion.
Is a list that you obtained last year, do they kind of carry over into
Yes.
this? So you already have a working network or a working group?
Yes.
People at least on the, yeah.
Yes, we do.
I imagine,
How far are you booked up? I mean, you know, is there a waiting period?
For the houses?
Yeah.
Or for the houses, sorry, I misunderstood what you meant. For the houses, we're not taking waiting because it's a mortgage. We had meetings with the neighborhoods, so there's no waiting because they're going to go through the mortgage. It's not a rental that would track in that. Once we have the numbers and advertise the pricing, anybody can come. It's first come, first serve, your mortgage approved and all that, and that's what we're going to work with. So, but we did tell some to start going through their mortgage process, talking to any mortgage, making sure they're trying to address any kind of thing that will prevent them from being able to get a mortgage. And of course, they're required to go through a first-time home buyers pre-purchase program. I apologize, right.
I just want to thank you for all that you all do at GCRA. I know y'all work very hard and y'all able to squeeze every drop of juice out of all those oranges that you have. I know a lot of the residents in Greer probably don't realize the level of impact you're making on economic development, affordable housing, you know, small businesses, the list goes on. I mean, you barely scratch the surface of the level of impact that you all are doing. I'm just so happy to get this annual report every year, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I have a question, and it's just from my general knowledge, and I'm going to ask the administrator to help me with this, but there is legislation that's on the books about if, let's just say, for instance, it's an apartment complex, and so many of those apartments are subsidized. Is that right? It makes the whole area non-taxable. Is that, am I?
They have to have a partnership with a nonprofit organization that'd be focused on low mod housing.
And my question is, if you had anybody just ask you about it, because I think once folks find out about this, they're going to be creating these partnerships and having low to moderate income housing in their development, but it's a small percentage, and it takes the property tax completely away from the municipality or the county that has to provide its service.
In terms of taking away properties to the municipalities, that will be the tax of that. I don't believe that does that.
And you
but I
haven't
don't
heard?
know. I haven't heard
Okay,
that.
okay.
Right.
Others? Mr. Nwamadoo, if we wanted to, I've got this, if we wanted to look at including a action plan in the next 5-year plan, which I believe will be the 25-26 plan, since the 24-25 will be the last year of our current 5-year plan. Would we be able to request in this upcoming year, the 24-25 plan, monies for an assessment of need for a much more intense or longer plan that we could incorporate into the next 5-year plan. I guess my thought process is that if we wanted to identify a community that we wanted to do, let's say just an infrastructure action plan, similar maybe to what was done in the Needmore community. Could we address that in the 24-25 plan using some money for an assessment of need to determine whether or not we could do that in the 5-year plan that's coming up?
Yes, you can. Could be a planning, set aside a portion for planning. And we'll have to see how much it is, because whatever they count against the planning and administration costs. So that is something that is doable. You decide on what area and how much you want to set aside from your current allocation for that.
Okay, thank you. Others? Council clear at this point? I'll open the floor up for discussion or questions from those that are in attendance tonight. Are there any here in regards to the public hearing of the notice of public hearing for the Greenville County Program Year 2024, the annual action plan for the city of Greer? I'll ask a second time. Are there any questions, comments in regards to the notice of the Greenville County Program Year 2024 annual action plan for the city of Greer from the Greenville County Community Development Block Grant? Seeing none, I will ask a third and final time before I call the public hearing to close. Is there anyone that would like to ask a question or make a comment in regards to the public hearing that has been held for the Greenville County Program Year 2024, their annual action plan for the city of Greer? Hearing none, then I want to call the public hearing to a close. With that, we will move to our regular meeting. This is a Greer City Council meeting called and convened this evening, 6:30 at City Hall. Having called the meeting to order, I'd like to ask Council Member Mark Hopper, if he would, to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation for council.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, you've blessed us in great ways individually, as a community, or you blessed us to be able to serve our community as part of this body. We thank you for the privilege. Lord, I pray that you would help us tonight to have a sense of humility and justness and wisdom that comes only from you. And Lord, thank you for what we remember this Holy Week and then Easter this coming weekend. Thank you for the gift of your Son and conquering death and sin for each one of us. Lord, be in our discussion tonight. Help all that's done and said to be for the good of our citizens and for your glory and honor. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, ma'am. Council, at the first of our meetings, we set aside a time for public forum. Public forum is an opportunity for those in the public, typically citizens, to come in regards to a activity or an agenda item. We have someone who has indicated that they would like to speak tonight. And I only ask that when you come to the podium, if you would please to state your name and address as a matter of record, since we only have one person that has indicated they want to speak in public forum, I would only ask that you limit your time and consideration to the rest of the meeting. And with that, Mr. Don Wall is is going to speak in public forum this evening.
My name is Don Wall. I live at 115 Peachtree Drive in Greer, South Carolina. I was a former mayor of Greer from 1992 to 2000. I have 2 council members with me who served on my council. At the time, Greer was the laughing stock of the state of South Carolina because of upsets during city council meeting. I was asked to run and did win, and I tried to stop that, and I think we've done a pretty good job in the last 30 years. And I read in the paper that Greer was going to ask for a $100 million bond. And my thought came, where are they going to get to pay for it? How are they going to do that? And so I had a conversation with our mayor on Sunday and asked him how he was going to pay for it. He said, I don't know. Well, we've always done things before this council voted 7-0 to vote for $100 million in bonds. We do a feasibility study, and then everything was clear and open. I am told by a member of the administration that the council never even knew this was going to come up before them until 3:30 last Monday before council meeting on Tuesday. I think it's been just ramrodded down their throats. And I fully object to that. And when the newspaper came out this past Sunday, this past Thursday, the public speaker called City of Greer irresponsible. That's your headlines of your news. Well, when we were struggling to make it in the 90s, we looked at Rock Hill in York County as the city. We wanted to be where they were. Now, I'm going to hand out some papers that you can help yourself to them if you would like to. Rock Hill is now under, and York County are now under investigation by law enforcement because of the deal they did with David Tepper and the Carolina Panthers. They voted to do, I think it was a $225 million bond, and they got in a lawsuit, and they wound up with what it looks like 240 acres of land with the structure already started on, and they are in a lawsuit, and they have had to settle the lawsuit. So we don't want to be looking like Rock Hill right now. And I think this thing has just been rammed down the city council's throat by our city administrator, Andy, who was the assistant deputy of York County when he was hired back here. So that's all I have to say. If you can vote in excuse me, I've had 3 brain surgeries. If you can vote in good conscience to pass this thing, I feel like we'll be looking at other headlines like they were when I took over. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Council, in your packet this evening are the minutes from the council meeting on March the 12th, 2024. I'll entertain a motion that they be received.
So moved.
Second.
And a second. With that, any items of note for the clerk this evening? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, as we do from time to time, we have a special recognition this evening. And I'm going to recognize a couple of folks. I would like to ask David Holtzclaw, who is with the Greer Recreation Program, to come forward. And I will join him for a recognition of our Tomahawk Youth Wrestling Program. So, David. This is getting to be an annual event, isn't it? It's a good thing. It is a good thing. It is a good thing indeed. This evening, we want to recognize two wrestlers that were part of the Tomahawk Youth Wrestling Program with the Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Department. These wrestlers were medalists in the South Carolina Youth Wrestling Association state tournament that took place in January and in March. This is the fourth consecutive season that Tomahawk Youth Wrestling has had multiple wrestlers medal in the state tournament. Corey Barnett won the state championship in the 12 and under heavyweight open division, and this is his fifth consecutive state championship. He went 15-0 in state tournaments this season. All 15 wins were via pin. And we're going to have him come in just a second, so hold your applause. Stillwagon, who won the bronze medal in the 10 and under rookie state tournament in the 66-pound weight class. There were only 10 other wrestlers. There were 10 other wrestlers in his bracket. Head coach Brian Levinson, who is in attendance tonight, and Brian, are you with us this evening? You come up here as well too. Brian and his coaches do a fantastic job with our youth wrestling program. They put their heart and soul into this program and continue to help build it into one of the city of Greer's proudest programs. The Tomahawk Youth Wrestling hosted its own tournament for the second straight year with over 150 local wrestlers participating. I'd like to ask Corey Barnett and Lucan Stillwagon if they would to come up if they're here this evening. Join me in giving these two young men a round of applause. Like the record, gents. Congratulations. Thank y'all. Wait a minute. Don't go anywhere yet. Don't go anywhere yet. I'm gonna let your head coach talk about you a little bit. How about that?
Yeah. These two are great to have in the room. They're very dedicated to the sport of wrestling. Coy just kind of came natural. I mean, look at him, he's a big kid. He goes out there pushing people around all the time. Lucan's a little more slick in his technique with the way, his quickness and his speed. But aside from them, there are like 48 other wrestlers in our room that work their little butts off too, and they help these two get better every day. So them winning state championships is a testament to everybody in that room. Wrestling's a great sport. If you have any kids, I highly suggest you sign them up. Oh, yeah.
All righty. We appreciate it. Give them another round of applause. Nice to see what you do.
Back to the fun stuff.
Ms. Cunningham, I'm going to put you on the spot a bit. Wrestling is one of approximately how many programming sports that we have at this point in time? At this time.
Take your shoes off.
I don't know, I have to go back and look. Seems like we just keep adding more and more every year.
All righty. Well, we appreciate all that y'all do in that regard, and thank you. With that then, we will move to departmental reports. Council, you have those contained in your packet, and we are joined by Mr. Seifert tonight to bring us our financial activity report. We don't see you as often as we used to.
Since I was already here, we gave her the night.
Give her a night off. Well, we appreciate you giving us the update on the financial report, sir.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I'm pleased to present to you the financial performance summary for the month end of February 2024 for our three largest and major funds. So beginning with the general fund, we have revenue recorded through February of $30,653,000 with related expenditures of $29,637,000. That amount is 5% under budget. And we have a carrying cash balance at the end of February of $21,771,000. Using the benchmark as our for the general fund, as we go through, those are cyclical numbers, and we've turned the corner again. So we now have a positive overall variance of just under $14,000 for those cyclical variances that we have. In the hospitality fund, we have revenue that is 5% over budget at $2,457,000 with related expenditures of $2,775,000. Carrying cash balance in the hospitality fund for February is $2,243,000. And then finally, in our stormwater fund, we have revenue recorded of $2,116,000 with expenditures of $1,456,000. And the cash balance in the stormwater fund for February is $2,852,000. Be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Council? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Merriman, the administrator's report, please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Two quick things. I want to, first of all, give congratulations to Robin Bioke with the Cultural Arts Center, our supervisor over Cultural Arts. I want to congratulate her on her 50th show as the artistic director with the Greer Children's Theater. She has been the cultural arts supervisor since 2009, and from what I understand, she raises the bar with every performance. So if you see Robin and her staff, congratulate them on a job well done and representing our Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Department in the city so well. And finally, the last thing is we're asking citizens to join the citywide litter cleanup challenge during the month of April. We're asking you to make a difference and beautify the community while enjoying the outdoors. All supplies are provided. So we've got you covered with bags, gloves, safety vests, pickup sticks, et cetera. And we'll even pick up the bags after your cleanup event. We're asking that you focus on collecting the litter. More information is available on the City of Greer website and social media for further details. But I know that I think Ayla had done a event last week and gave out, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere over 40 plus pickup sticks for people to use just for a weekend cleanup. So it's working, and we appreciate those efforts. Mr. Mayor, Council, that concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Council, let's move to items of old business. This is not a misprint. We are attending to two matters that were held over and are coming back to us again. So the first item this evening is the second and final reading of ordinance number 16-2023. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of a certain property owned by Leon Hicks Real Estate LLC located on West Wade Hampton Boulevard by 100% petition and to establish a zoning classification of C3. Ms. Byers, any new or additional information in regards to ordinance number 16-2023?
Planning Commission held a public hearing and recommended approval on June 19th, 2023.
For the purpose of discussion, and it comes from staff with approval, I'll entertain a motion to receive second and final reading of ordinance number 16-2023.
So moved.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion.
Do we know the proposed or the intent for the property?
Yes, and we do have the original slide seen. It is to build a quick service restaurant off Wade Hampton.
Typically, I would do this at the first reading by show of hand. Is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Record will indicate no one indicated so. Council? Others? Questions? Comments? Discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert. Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, let's move to the second item. The second item this evening before us is the second and final reading of ordinance number 34-2023. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of a certain property owned by Nicholas Jordan located at 408 East Poinsett Street from RM1 to C2. Ms. Byers, any new or additional information in regards to the second or final reading of ordinance number 34-2023?
No updates.
With that then, for the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion that we receive ordinance number 34-2023.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Again, by show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Okay, thank you. No one indicated so, for the record. Floor is yours, sir.
Again, same question. The intent for the rezoning?
Yeah, so the intent is to combine this parcel with those surrounding and expand the existing grocery store, El Torito. There you can see from the aerial.
Others?
This was, I think last time they were here, they said they were just going to be expanding the parking lot for now. Does that sound right?
That is correct. This case will actually be going to our Planning Advisory Committee this Thursday. They'll be planning to add a new building, but the rezoning for this specific parcel would be primarily parking.
Questions? Comments? Discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert.
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, let's move to the third item before us this evening, which is the second and final reading of ordinance number 12-2024. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of a portion of a certain property owned by Wood Memorial Park located at 863 Gap Creek Road from suburban neighborhood to commercial corridor. Ms. Byers, any new or additional information in regards to the second and final reading of ordinance number 12-2024?
No updates.
It comes with no updates. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second.
And a second. The floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis.
Yes.
Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, let's move to the last item of old business, be number 4, which is the second and final reading of ordinance number 14-2024. This is an ordinance providing for the issuance of general obligation bonds in one or more series, tax exempt or taxable in an amount not to exceed the city's constitutional debt limitation, as that limit may change from time to time, to provide for the funding of various capital projects as part of an installment purchase type arrangement, authorizing the city administrator to prescribe the form and details of the bonds, providing for the payment of the bonds and the disposition of the proceeds of the bonds, providing for borrowing in anticipation of the issuance of the bonds, providing for the disposition of property related to the bonds, providing authority for the city to reimburse itself for expenditures prior to borrowing, providing for the creation and/or utilization of one or more entities to facilitate an installment purchase type arrangement, providing for all other related matters. With that, for the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion.
I don't know if this is the time to discuss it or not, would it be? As far as the amount and as far as, okay, I hate to put this up here, but anyway. I've just had a couple of concerns, and I'd already spoke with a couple of people in reference to that. My main concern, I think, of course, 100 million, that was big. But there was 2 items really that kind of had bothered me. One was 150,000 square feet in the building. I think when I think about 150,000 square feet, I kind of get floored with how big that could be. I Googled so many properties trying to come up with something that would illustrate that. No, and I'm not saying, it would be an outstanding facility from what we've been told. I guess when I thought about, and we originally talked about Victor Park being changed and not being able to accommodate, and the building getting old and needing a lot to be done, I guess when we replaced it, my thought would be, okay, maybe it will be 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, maybe bigger than what it is now. So I kind of felt like we could maybe start with a smaller scale building. And I know that was kind of brought up at one point, maybe start with something smaller and have it where in the future it could be enlarged, added to. The other thing that kind of weighed on my mind was the 500-car garage. I felt like those 2 things maybe would be something that could be scaled down with all this 100 million to bring it down a little bit. I think all the plans were outstanding. I can see them probably being very useful, but with the total of the four projects, I just felt like maybe that was a lot that we were taking on as a city at this time. I know that we plan for future growth, and Greer is, from what I've read, South Carolina's the fastest growing state in the nation. I don't know if that's a real good thing or not, but we are seeing an abundance of people, moving here. So I'm sure in time that things will change. The economy is certainly not that great at this time. However, I don't really see, the materials are high now. I don't really see, or houses that were 125,000 at one time now are 250 or whatever to buy a decent house to live in. So all the costs have escalated, and the thing there, I'm not really seeing that will ever reverse. I don't know if a recession or whatever would cut some of the cost building expenses down, whatever. That's kind of hard for anybody to forecast as to how that would be. But anyway, those are just two of my things that I wanted to point out that I just had felt a little uncomfortable with.
I agree with the need of the facilities. I know most of the conversation has been about this recreation complex. And that consumes the lion's share of the dollars. But when you look at all four projects, no matter how you rank them, 1, 2, 3, 4, you have public safety, which is a fire station and a training facility for police and fire. We do not have a fire station in the northern part of our city, and we are operating out of another department's facilities covering that. It's not the best scenario, but it works. The parking garage, I had questions myself, and when the logic, when you follow that as far as why do we need another parking garage, we have one, and I think that we utilize on average about 70% of those spaces. So we still have some capacity there. However, there are things that are working in downtown. One is there's more people going to be living in downtown and visiting downtown that will far exceed this one parking garage. Although it's not needed right now, it will be needed in the very short term. The recreation complex, we need a new recreation facility just for the programming that we provide and the number of people we're trying to serve. The big part of the recreation facility is to capitalize on the sports tourism component that we would be the only player in town, so to speak. For instance, the boys that we recognize tonight for wrestling, we could host those tournaments and others here. Now, what that means is you have people filling up our hotels, eating in our restaurants, so on and so forth. So I think there's a need for all of it. And maybe I should have led with this. I'm going to apologize to my constituents because I think I thought I had a total grasp of this, but I really didn't until our last meeting. And then from then on, I've been trying to make sure I had everything in my head so I could make a decision that was appropriate. For my sake and this council and the public who's listening, can you briefly, I understand the bonds portion of it, which is my big hangup, and I've told you before, is the bonds to be issued so we can start. But can you give us a brief description of the ways that we intend to pay for this project besides taxes? Because if I were to vote for it, every year after that, I'm going full bore. We've got to get this millage rolled back off the books. And it won't be tonight, but I do intend to introduce an ordinance that puts before council every year prior to budget that we look at things, how we have said we're going to pay for things. or projects that we are incentive programs or economic incentive programs that we've entered into, is this working? That kind of thing. But that'll be at a later date. But could you please tell us about, like you've told us, but go over again, the impact fees, things like that, and also the prospectus that we received from a potential manager of such a recreational facility that captures those tourism dollars.
Yes, sir, Mr. Sherwood. At a very high level, I think the easiest way to put this is that the bonding process, the IPRB, the installment purchase revenue bonds, are designed to be paid back by any means that the city has available, okay? That could be ad valorem taxes. It could be ad valorem taxes solely. It could be hospitality and accommodations tax revenue. It could be, if this council is so inclined to consider impact fees and pass impact fees, those would qualify to pay back those bonds. It could be fund balance every year, appropriations out of fund balance to go to this. So there's a significant amount of flexibility in the IPRB process, which allows us to pay this back from a number of sources. Some of those sources also include any overage over operations and revenues from the facility itself, okay? The pro forma and the economic impact analysis that we had performed on this particular initiative speculates that conservatively, I would say, by year 2 or 3, we're $17 to $20 million a year in economic impact to our area off a facility like this. So yes, sir, the intent is to generate revenue from outside of the city to pay these bonds back. Now, that could come in the form of the impact fees by people moving in and paying an impact fee on single-family homes, multifamily homes, single-family attached homes, through revenue generated on-site, and then through hospitality and accommodations tax revenue generated as a result of this facility.
So let's take one of those, the hospitality, the impact fees. And I know in our planning retreats, we all talked about that, and there seemed to be a general acceptance. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Have we begun running numbers to see, in year, whenever, I would assume that if impact fees were part of this, that we were working on that right now. So when we go into year 2, we've already taken action on that. Those are put in place. And what's the projected revenue? Are we at that point?
We are close from the study being performed to determine what the number would be specific to what the impact fee is, what's eligible from a dollar amount standpoint. It's a volatile number because it's predicated on the number of housing units that are permitted and permits pulled in any given year. So I can't project that. What we can do is look back and say, well, we know that these number of houses were built. We do know that through our annexation fee that was modeled on the impact fee process, we know what we've generated in revenue off of that, but that is significantly lower than what we believe at this point the impact fee will generate. So that's just going to be a volatile number. It's just going to be predicated on how many houses are approved and permitted in any given year.
And is all impact fees predicated on residential growth?
Yes, sir.
There's no impact fee that could be tied to commercial development.
It can be, but that's council's, that's the governing body's determination on how that would be done. But those impact fees, just to be clear, are going to be tied to an approved capital improvements plan that these would fall under. These projects would fall under.
I've never liked the idea of development that is needed because of growth being done on the backs of existing citizens. because they got us to where we are now. And I will say this, if this goes through, then I will look at the budget, because I believe that there is a lot of opportunity for everyone involved, from the youngest to the oldest, for city employees, for folks that own businesses, people who live here. There is an unlimited amount of opportunity that all of this will create. But it's coming up front, it comes out of the pocketbooks of myself, folks sitting in the audience. And I think the city itself, the city departments, they need to have skin in the game as well, because they will benefit from all of this several different ways. And so that's what I'm saying about looking at the budget. I know that we've already had a planning meeting, and department heads, as they always do, say, we're going to need this, this, and this. Well, maybe we don't get this, 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 and this. Maybe we have zero increase on the operating budget, next year. That's what I'm going to be looking at. So if it passes, my mindset is going to be, we've got to get rid of any millage that we're asking our existing citizens and businesses to pay to do this.
Is thought given with the new budget as far as freezing certain parts of it at the current level, and we have to use a certain amount of money, 2.8 million every year, to recoup some of that from the existing budget instead of doing it all in new millage?
So, yeah, to answer your question, yes, that's been part of the academic process of getting us to where we are. This city has consistently relied on the growth of the mill and the value in the growth of that mill to continue operations. There does come a point of diminishing returns where freezing millage and paying for it in-house through our existing millage is possible, but that would absolutely cripple our ability to operate. And I would not be here recommending that if that is the only option. So to answer your question, no, sir, if council is so inclined to freeze millage, but utilize the existing millage, I would respectfully say no, staff does not recommend this bond ordinance.
What is our recent history of excess revenue? It's pretty high, isn't it, last couple of years?
Historically, over the last several years, yes, sir. If you remember from the audit that we presented last month, that excess was
Couple million, right?
no, that's only about 7,000.
In this particular audit, because what we have done is, because we far exceeded that 35% threshold with the 51 some projects that we have got actually being built or constructed or worked on now throughout the city, we are spending down that fund balance to get us to that 35% threshold. So we've been trying to get that threshold back down to that 35% because we were at well over 50 at some point.
So that wouldn't be excess revenues over expenditures?
It is, but only for the general fund.
Only general fund.
Those other funds are restricted in their use for the most part. There are others that, American, mentioned hospitality accommodations. The excess in that can be used while it is restricted. It is a
Qualifying expense.
It's the bond ordinance in front of you today.
Right.
And that's why, to that degree, that to be a little bit bullish about the revenue that can be generated through hospitality and accommodations tax revenue, this is a qualifying expense to pay those bonds back through hospitality and accommodation tax.
Let me clarify something. This letter that you sent us out earlier, you want to institute the property tax increase in this coming budget that we're about to get,
I would
or
recommend.
next year?
I would recommend it, yes, sir, this coming year.
It was a little confusing. At one place it says 24, 25, and one place it says 26.
Yes, it would be the recommended, yes, sir.
I think one of the things that we need to remember is, by our own policy, some of this excess that you've been talking about, we have been putting in our reserve fund. So we have an appropriately strong reserve fund at this point in time based on the directive of this council. So that's where part of that goes, and that's certainly an issue that this council could address.
Well, why would you not use that to launch? If we're going to do something of this magnitude, why would you not use that fund that you've been collecting to launch it?
That's a policy decision that this table can make.
If it will cut that millage the first year, I think it's a good move.
What, when we talk about the restricted funds, there's two I know that we could apply. I just don't know how much of dollars that aren't already spoken for. One is in the hospitality, and the other is stormwater. How much are we obligated for now that right now, what is obligated out of the, out of our 2% and then our accommodations?
Out of the hospitality has about a $3 million budget. Large, their current debt on this facility, current debt, 2017 bonds, which was the downtown parking garage and art center, that is utilizing those funds as this facility rolls off in 26. Those dollars get freed up. So between operations and the debt, and this year alone was a budgeted surplus of about $175,000 that I remember. As I mentioned tonight, that revenue is 5% over budget today. Several hundred thousand of unallocated funds today in hospitality and accommodations, and then it rolls off, and that frees up $500,000 or more.
Just by way of reminder, the value of a mill in Greer right now is about $200,000.
One other thing, if you would clarify it for me, Andy, in this bond contract, it lays out the initial bond issue, subsequent bond issues and all that. Could you go back through that? I think you explained it before, but I'd like for you to go through it again, why we're laying it out like we're laying it out.
So the way the bond works is effectively the bond purchaser wants some security in the purchase, okay? So for instance, if we were just building a sports and event center and just building a parking garage, those can arguably be, from a bond perspective, a bond purchaser perspective, be seen as a non-essential government service. You've had this discussion a number of times. When we issue them in the 2024 and 2025s, we have tied the projects together so that guarantees for the bond purchaser that we will pay the debt. We won't walk away from a parking garage or a sports and event center. The 2024 will have the parking, propose to have the parking deck and the public safety training facility in it. That ensures to the bond purchaser that we're good and we're going to pay it because we're not going to walk away from a public safety training, public safety facility. Same thing with using it effectively as collateral on the 2025s is you have the sports and events that are tied to the new fire station on Gross Meadows, Station 97. That ensures that we will pay our debt because they are knitted together.
And then ancillary projects, we've got 13 million for the sports and event center. I don't understand why that is down there.
So are you talking about the 2024s?
I'm assuming yes.
Yeah, so what we did was if you'll recall, back in May of last year, I believe it was May of last year, council passed a reimbursement resolution. And in May of last year, that reimbursement resolution outlined all 4 of these projects. And the money that you see roll into 2024, there's those ancillary projects which will cover some property purchases and begin the initial architecture and engineering work for the Sports and Event Center that will then be fully realized in the 2025 series bonds.
That's obviously beyond my area of expertise.
Andy, just so we're all clear, so 35%, can you explain that a little more in detail, what that number means? You're saying 35% of our annual has to be allocated into a reserve?
No, well, yes, sir. What we do is council has passed a financial policy that says that our fund balance will not drop below 35% of our general fund, full stop. I believe, GASB recommends 18% currently, with a recommendation that they're going to send it up, but this council has taken the approach that 35% is that floor. So that's what I'm talking about with the fund balance.
And what dollar amount does that equate to?
This year's 35% threshold of 48 million, so it's 35% of the $48 million budget we have this year.
So I know we've been talking about these projects for at least a year and a half. I think they started out as code names like Indy and Line Out and Titus and what was the other one? But anyways, I know we've been talking about these for a while. I know for this particular situation, I know this is going to be a gut vote for me of how do we, before the city was 50,000 residents, we operated a certain way. Now that we're at 50,000 plus, maybe we need to start being innovative and understanding how do we change that trajectory. But I know folks, there was someone that said this might have been ramrod down our throats. I've known about this for about a year and a half. We just didn't effectuate how we're going to pay for it. So I'm just glad that we're having these conversations in the open that publicly, I would not say this has been ramrod for sure, because we've been talking about this for at least a year and a half or more.
Yeah, I'll just echo some of what I said in the last meeting. I believe that each one of these projects represents identified current needs that we have seen, that our citizens have articulated, that they want, that they see value in our community. I think very few people would argue with public safety functions. Those projects very clearly in our citizens' best interest. That leaves, again, the parking deck and the athletics and events center. I will say quickly, speaking anecdotally about the parking deck, we could cut it to 350 spaces, but my guess is we wouldn't save any money, right? And so we're being very proactive in this. Council, before I got here, you guys did a great job of, innovatively thinking about this facility, the park, investing, transforming this area of our community, propelling the downtown area into what it's become and what it's continuing to become, even moving forward. The parking deck, you all moved on before I came online. The streetscape totally changed the face of our downtown and is paying dividends many times over already and will for decades to come. We're being proactive with the parking deck. There's no doubt. We already know that there's more to come. We're not done downtown. And so, again, 500, here's 500 spaces. Well, is there going to be 500 people? Well, no, that's not what we're trying to accomplish necessarily. But again, cutting it down, we're really not going to save any money. And again, we're being proactive, investing for decades to come. Where the athletics and events facility is concerned, I hear what you're saying, Miss Albert, but the reality is we're not building a basketball gym or a volleyball gym. We're building something that will allow us to do programming that's being asked for and that we don't even know, maybe doesn't even exist right now, that our citizens will want. And I think the size, in part, plays into the flexibility that we're going after to be able to use it for, again, for dozens of different areas of programming. Again, primarily, first of all, for the good of our citizens. First of all, the ones that are here now, but yes, generational, our children and grandchildren, perhaps even beyond, I would argue. But then beyond that, the size helps play into the flexibility that we're going to be able to leverage so that our citizens aren't even paying for the operation of the facility. I think we've seen very conservatively how the size and the flexibility of the space, that's not just going to be a gymnasium, but both indoor, outdoor amenities and different ways that we can utilize that space for us citizens and put it out there to leverage for things sports tourism wise. It's a no-brainer in that regard. Again, to be able to have other people pay for the programming that's going to happen in that facility. And the flexibility, again, for current programming and future programming as well. That's a win for sure that I see. And again, I said my support for these projects is mine alone. I'll say what I said last time. I appreciate the staff. What are the hundreds of hours that I know has gone into gathering information, pulling together, feasibility studies, et cetera, pro formas, making sure that we have the information we need to see a number of different ways to fund this and pay for this. That is why I am comfortable with where we are. And that is my decision about my support for these projects. That there is a lot of flexibility. I will say I agree with you, Mr. Arrowood. I think for me, as we do get into that discussion with further budget talks, it's kind of a non-starter for me to make sure that we structure things in a way, we look at things like impact fees, we look at other, accommodations, other ways to fund this so that to whatever extent ad valorem taxes do, enter into that equation, that we're positioned to make that impact as minimal as possible, and then potentially that we structure in such a way that it is carved out specifically for this purpose alone, and that it rolls back off, when we do address it. And that we can address that from a year-to-year basis, as we know conditions are gonna, go up and down and change as we move forward. As these investments start generating other revenue, that we can take advantage of that to return that investment, to our citizens as well. So I appreciate where we're going, appreciate where we are, and I'm in full support.
And I got a few more questions.
Yes.
So I know, like some of these projects, fire station, we need it. Police training, that's something definitely needed. Parking garage, I'm halfway tempted to park in Hopper's private lot half the time when I go to downtown Greer. So we probably need a parking garage. Now everybody knows you got a private lot. But could you effectuate a little bit around the sports and event center? I know they told us that, I think it was summer programming, we put it out there in 30 seconds, it was filled up, now it's wait list. Could you effectuate some of the wait list and programming that we have for the needs, or why would we even need something this size?
Yeah, we've, I think just real simply put, a number of our programs are suffering because of capacity issues. And we have kids in the city that are on waiting lists, that live in the city that are on waiting lists to play basketball. We have growing numbers of adult programs of various types that are strapped for space. That facility is maximized 7 days a week. Our summer camp, absolutely. We opened that up, and within 30 seconds, it was booked, and we have a waiting list for that. So there is just at a bare minimum, we're running out of space. And when I spoke to and charged the company that did this feasibility study for us, I specifically tasked them with this. I said, assuming no growth in the city of Greer, nothing, that a wall was built around the city of Greer, and we only had organic growth for the next 20 years. What does a facility look like that can handle our recreation needs as a community? That's your baseline. And then on top of that, okay, once you have that, what does sports tourism look like? Because we know we're primed from a geographic standpoint, from a national effective migration standpoint, moving into the Southeast, specifically South Carolina, we are primed to be in a position to benefit from what is now a $20 billion a year industry in this country. And so, yeah, the sports tourism was part of that in order to carry the weight and pay the freight on what we need at a bare minimum as a community.
So the way I understand is the sports tourism component was a funding mechanism per se to pay for the recreation facility. But regardless of how we paid for it, we still needed a larger facility.
That's the best summation, yes, sir. There's, assuming no other growth, nothing. It doesn't change the fact that we cannot continue with organic growth in the city of Greer and operate out of the Victor Gym. We're out of room.
If you'd allow me to correct one thing you said we're running out of space.
We're out.
We are out of space. We have been out of space for several years, and the space that we do have for the existing programming, if it's raining, get the mop out in between quarters of the basketball game. We are past time to need to address this. Our citizens deserve for us to address this.
Yeah, and just let me, excuse me, let me just emphasize, I think all of the projects, all four, are good projects. But there again, like the 500-car garage, I mean, is that not something that could be kind of the garage eliminated and parking spaces set up there for a certain period of time? I'm not talking about like a half of a parking garage for 350 cars. I wasn't thinking about that. My thought was do away with parking garage, period, and use the parking spaces that are there available. That should take quite a bit of chunk out of that 10 million for that. And then, of course, with the building, I think it'll be fantastic when the time comes, when we reach our peak and we, whether it's 15, 20 years from now, whether you fill up the whole thing or not. But I will say that I did see on the, I think it was the internet today, that Greenville was saying over the March Madness or whatever they had going on this past weekend there, that they ended up like having 18 million, I think it was, revenue come in from the hotel stays and the food and all that. But of course, you're looking at a different complex and all stuff there too, as far as that goes. Not saying we couldn't host something, similar to that. And I don't have a problem with it. It's just the fact that I just feel like that, I know we have a good amount of acreage there that things can be built on, and that, part could be built and part could be built later as the need arises. But, I mean, that's my deal. I mean, like I'm saying, I think they're all great projects. It's just trying to cut some down and maybe getting it to a lower level, but,
I appreciate very much what you're saying, Ms. Albert. I think what we're all wrestling with, or I think so, I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouth, is there's cost to do what we're talking about doing now, And there's very real cost to waiting to do what we know needs to be done in some form at some point as well. So,
Yeah, especially if you see inflation continuing as it
absolutely.
is,
So
right?
to
yeah.
your point, talking about just simple example of residential housing, $125,000 home that maybe was 10 or 15 years ago being $250,000
Not 10 or 15 years
today.
ago. It was closer time than that.
Sure enough, sure enough. So, you're talking about waiting 5 years, 10 years to put a parking deck that we know is gonna be needed in that area with where downtown is headed. What does a $10 million parking deck turn into? 20 million, $25 million? Who knows? Who knows? So, part of the reason why we're in the position we're in on a couple of these is we've had a Band-Aid in place.
Yeah, and
The
I guess
gymnasium space.
our revenue as a city will go up anyway, I would think, based on once the new assessments are done on property taxes, like your $100,000 house now that you're taxed on now is going to be 200. Your $300,000 house is going to be 600, So the taxes are going to be going up, which will be the benefit of,
Not supposed
helping
to.
pay things, yeah, so.
It's not supposed to.
Assessment, you don't think it's going to go up?
It's supposed to be a net zero.
Let me just speak about construction cost. And this is just to explain to everybody, we talked about this building, the park and policing courts, the payments for that rolling off in a couple of years. When we undertook this project, it was 20 million, is that right, Mayor? 20 million?
Roughly, yeah.
We are in the process of completing a fire station. And now this includes land acquisition, a lot of civil work that had to be done. But we're bumping 10 million on a fire station, one building. And that doesn't, all that says is there's been a lot of inflation from labor, material, the whole thing. And so use that as just as information.
Andy, I do want to piggyback off what Judy was saying, just to entertain. I know with the parking garage, was there certain site constraints that lent us to a parking garage versus standard parking?
Well, yeah, there's already a lot on site. And even with the demolition of the building that we purchased, that additional space wouldn't be that many additional spaces. So yeah, there was definitely some site constraints on that. So we looked at the opportunity to maximize the square footage of the building and go high enough to accommodate what we can on the site. So we could go with less spaces in theory because it's, just knock a floor off or knock 2 floors off. But I think that would be just a bit short-sighted given the fact that if we can get it on there and it's not going to get any cheaper to do it and we won't be able to add it later, now's the time to do that. If you would have gone on the 3rd floor today and yesterday and tomorrow, you will see people moving offices right now. Just in my time here, we've converted a conference room and 2 storage rooms into offices, and we're still moving people over to the new renovated facility over on Berry Avenue. And while this facility is fantastic and it's iconic for the city, we've exceeded even those expectations made 16 years ago for what this facility could accommodate and for the number of years that it would accommodate this city. So we are learning from our mistakes, as innocent as they may have been at the time, that we probably need to take the opportunities where we can and maximize our investment.
I think one of the things we need to remember as well, Council, as we discuss the parking garage, is the fact that Greer Relief's move from their current site to their new site is imminent. It's any day now as they wind up the work down there. one of the things that we've discussed is the development of their site and the parking area behind it. So, we could be talking about sooner rather than later that we could be losing, I don't know, what is there, 75 or 100
93
sites?
spaces on that
93
site.
spaces. Right there in, within walking distance of where we're talking about this new garage. So the idea that it's not needed or necessary at this point, I think we have to consider the fact that it could be sooner rather than later that we'd be losing 100 spaces to future development on that particular site.
Let's make sure folks understand, that is private development. After we would market the property. The building had become too small, but there's maintenance issues that it's just made it's an untenable situation. So that's why we worked with Greer Relief to get them to a new location.
That's correct. Mhm. Others?
Andy, on the impact fees, I really like the idea because it's another growth mechanism that we can use. I mean, you're having issues with our city of Greer, staff growing, the city itself is growing. I think the impact fees would be a great mechanism for growth management as well, so that we can continue to mold and shape this thing the way we need to. So I look forward to seeing what comes about of that.
I haven't said much tonight. I'll just reiterate what I said at our last meeting. And Mark touched on this. The facility we have for basketball currently and all the other indoor activities, pickleball and other things that we do there is abysmal. And it should have been replaced years ago. And so I really look forward to this new facility and to give our kids and adults as well the opportunity to recreate and to get more active. I think that's one of the challenges. I know Judy talks about that a lot, that the city, as we continue to grow, we're creating density, and with density comes less green space and opportunity to move around and to recreate. And so I really do feel like we have an obligation to create more space to recreate, even because obviously it gets cold, right? And so we have several months where you can't be outside and it's darker and it's not as safe. And so it'd be great to give people an option, an opportunity to get inside and to move around a little bit and to get fit and to be the part of a vibrant community that we do have here. And I think you said you're bullish on Greer. I'm bullish on Greer. We can't predict the future up here. I wish that we could. I got elected in 2009. It was a scary time. If some of you were here and you remember the recession that we were going through, and a lot of people were calling into question the decision to build this facility, and they just thought this was the craziest thing at the time. And I ran on thinking, I think it's the right decision, and I think we're going to recover and we're going to come back from this, and we have. And like you said, we've exceeded expectations in the years since we built this facility. I've been to several weddings here. I've been to the events out there, Freedom Blast, it's amazing. The Moonlight movies, I can just go through many different things that I've done here with this facility. Greer Idol, I mean, it's amazing the impact this has had, and I don't even think we anticipated that. And I think the new recreation facility will have that type of impact on the city. I think it's going to be a real feather in our cap. It's going to bring people here. It's going to get people reinvigorated, excited about recreation in the city. Also glad to see a fire station up in District 4 too. I think the people in the Lake Cunningham, Lake Robinson area, I think it's overdue, and I think they're going to be excited about kicking that service up a notch in that area. And I think we do owe that to those folks in my district. So I'm excited about that too. And it goes without saying that the parking garage, based on what the mayor just said, is clearly a need. And then the police and training facility, I mean, that's obviously a no-brainer. That's our largest department, and they need the most support.
I think everyone up here supports the projects. The money is the heartburn.
I agree. I agree.
I think that's the consensus.
Mr. Dumas, you said you hadn't said much tonight. I've said more than I usually do, and thought of a couple more things while you're talking, so. I did just want to say, look, I hear $100 million, that is a lot of money. That is not an insignificant investment. And so that is one reason why I appreciate the work that I know, and I think all of us know, that staff has put in gathering endless amounts of information on these projects individually, but then, what we've ended up doing, looking at them almost as one large project, one large investment into our community. And the stress-tested scenario after scenario after scenario of how are we going to make sure we're responsible and are able to pay for this, right? Like we've all said, we recognize the need and the value of each one of these, but we spent a lot of time looking at that, and staff has helped us in that regard. But again, I think we all would say $100 million is not an insignificant investment, or this is not an insignificant conversation. And both good and bad, that's part of the point. This is a big investment, and our community is worth that. And I don't think when we're talking about being bullish on Greer, we have every reason to be bullish on Greer. Every reason in the world to be bullish on Greer. We can do this. We can do this.
Well, I think it's a little bit cart before the horse, taking this bond issue vote without having a budget already in hand. That's a real problem for me. I'm not sure I can really make the intelligent decision that I need to make without knowing what the budget's going to be. What we've done is we've taken the easy way, and we've just said, okay, it's going to cost 14 mills a year to support this. Let's just go ahead and plan on 14 more mills and let the budget fall where it may. That for me is a problem.
From a perspective of transparency with what Riley's saying, have we thought about how we're going to formulate all that stuff together so that we can tell our constituents in their face?
Debt service is debt service. We know what we are going to have to pay. And so the question then becomes, through the budget process, is as we fine tune the budget for this year, is we know that the debt service will be X number of mills. Now, as we develop the budget, there's $200,000, $400,000 in projected excess fund balance revenues, then y'all can look to me and staff and say, okay, we're going to use all 400,000 of that, and we're going to lower the debt service millage in this particular case by 2 mills. That's how this whole process will work, and will work from year in to year out. So that's why to me, it's not cart before the horse, because we know that if we go down this road, and this first series of bonds at $40 million, and then the whole bond issue at $100 million is going to be X number of mills, we know that's the debt service. Whether or not it boils down to actual mills every year in the budget, well, that remains to be seen as we fine tune that budget. And it could be less than that based on performance, and especially in the years to come, based on performance of hospitality, based on performance of accommodations, based on the amount of money that comes in from impact fees, which, by the way, if we go this route, every dime of it will go to pay these capital expenditures off. So yes, sir, I understand your point. But the debt service is the debt service is the debt service. And that to me, that operates in a silo separate than the budget.
So it's a fair assessment when I'm talking with constituents that the millage number could change based off of how much revenue and shifting things around. So it's not necessarily.
We're going to have an annual debt service payment. And that debt service payment is equal to X number of mills. As long as we make that, and we don't, in theory, you could do it without raising a mill. We could do boot drives, whatever.
But you could do it without raising the millage, but that debt service payment has to be paid. And the bond purchaser doesn't give a rip about how it's paid, just so long as it's paid. And that's why we use the IPRB method, because it gives us that flexibility to do that. This isn't a revenue bond. This is installment purchase revenue bonds, which allows us the flexibility to pledge nothing but the good faith and credit of the city.
Do we have any forecasted period of time it will take to pay this off? I
It's a
mean, if we
30-year
have
period. It's a
other-
30-year period.
So if you have something else that comes up that you have to have another 10 million project, I mean, do you just throw it in there with the other, or maybe
This is a separate
maybe you've already
series.
paid this off, 10 million off, then you use that 10 million, I mean,
Well, there's always the question of debt capacity, right? But in this particular case, we're not exceeding that debt capacity over the 30 years. So we would have some flexibility. And then again, the more we pay it off, the more flexibility we have.
What's is Greer Trust, are they along on this?
The Greer Trust met, but took no action on this particular item. So what we've established is a 501c3 called the Corporation for Greer. The Corporation for Greer will handle these projects in particular. They are planning on meeting on Friday. They will have a resolution that they will pass or consider, and then council will then consider a separate resolution concurring with that resolution.
So we won't use Greer Trust?
We will not be using Greer Trust.
Who's on the new board?
I'll provide those names to council.
You know, in the past, we picked them.
Council, we had names given, we pulled those names from, when I looked to council about the four Greer steering committees.
Right.
We pulled those names from there.
We've covered a lot of ground. And in this discussion, it has occurred to me that there are some of us at this table that remember this same type of discussion around how were we going to pay for this building? And what was going to be the impact of that? And little did we know that, 3 years after we moved into this building, we were going to see one of the biggest downturns in the real estate market that we've seen in a number of years, and we weathered that storm without even laying anybody off, which is our prescribed directive to make it through that period of time, and we didn't have to do that. It was interesting that we were just talking about this building and the fact that we are at this point with this particular building that we are now moving people from this building to other locations around the city. Because at the time that we built it, I don't know that any of us sitting here thought that we'd be doing that within 15 years of doing this building. Not only have we outgrown this building to some extent, if you look back, I would venture a guess that when we built this building, we probably had a total of maybe 100 employees or a few more than that, I guess, at that point in time. We now have close to...
We have over 400.
Over 400 employees at this time. The other thing that occurred to me, and I'd have to do a little bit of math to figure this out, but I think it would be interesting for us to take a look back at the percentage of budget to bond or bond to budget that we did in 2006 as opposed to where we are right now, because I suspect there are some similarities in that as well too. $100 million is a lot of money. There is no getting around that. But it also occurred to me, and I don't think we have to be apologetic about 4 projects for $100 million when you're talking about a $90 million high school in Woodruff. You know, you're talking about nearly $100 million for one facility. And that's the norm now. We talked about that earlier.
Well, they know no restraint, though, schools.
Well, you know, you've got a middle school in another county nearby here that's going to be in that same price range. And I think, you know, it's whether there's restraint or not, we are building four different buildings here. You know, and we have, you know, to the point, well, what happens if such and such happens and we need to do something? As council is well aware, at the first of the year, we had 51 projects in progress. So we have done an incredible job of maximizing our use of our funds and our funding. And I think the point needs to be made as well, too, to the former mayor's point that I replied that I didn't know how we would pay. You know, as a matter of some clarification, you know, my point was that, as y'all have heard, sitting here tonight, there's 12, 15 different ways that we're gonna pay on this. Some of that still to be realized. And, you know, we're going in just a couple of weeks to seek a new rating on our bonding. A AA+ may change some of this even as we go along. And to your point, it's valid. We need this budget, and I think that we will obviously have that as we continue to move along. But, you know, there are things that, even as we are this far along in the second reading, that are not of our control at this point in time until we were able to pin some more of the details down. I think it was Mr. Hopper or somebody else said that, you know, part of what we're doing here, and particularly with the recreation building, is not necessarily building for ourselves as much as it is for a community that continues to grow. And we didn't just jump into this matter of bonding without some perspective in regards to what we were doing. And we have used folks that helped us analyze what it was we were going to do and how we wanted to do it. And council has seen those models at the retreat. We saw those models. We saw them in another different presentation. Our current rate of growth is 7 or 8%. We didn't look at paying back these bonds using that rate of growth. We didn't look at it at 6% or even 4% or 2%. We looked at it on essentially no growth, and we can pay for it. Now, to somebody's point that was made earlier, and I think Andy reiterated that if we had to be in that position where we had no growth, we can still pay for the bond, but it's going to affect other projects that are going to be going on at that time. But there's no reason that we can't expect that there is going to be some growth over the next 20 or 30 years here, just based on projections. You know, if they all don't come true, I still think we are poised for growth. And so as we move forward, I think we need to realize that, you know, we started talking about some of these projects over 3 years ago when the ARPA money came in, and we started talking about fire stations and the fact that we're going to have to do something with one of our current stations and we're replacing it right now. The ability to do a fire and police training station or building. There's really lots of opportunities here. And I think the point has been made that what time is a good time and what time is a bad time. We could do these one at a time and stretch it out over the next 10 or 15 years, but at the expense of what? Public safety, recreation, the merchants downtown. I don't know that there's too many good selections in that. And so as we move forward tonight, for you that have joined us this evening and have listened to this discussion, I hope you have found it helpful and appropriate. We've had 2 lengthy conversations at this point now about this matter, and an unlimited number of discussions between ourselves about different things. And so I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that everybody sitting at this table has given an ample amount of personal time, of their family time, of their business time to making their decision tonight, and we will honor that decision. And with that, I'll ask one more time if anybody wants to add anything before we vote. Are all minds clear on the second and final reading of Ordinance 14-2024, an ordinance to provide for the issuance of general obligation bonds in one or more series, tax exempt or taxable, in an amount not to exceed the city's constitutional debt limit, and it may change from time to time, to provide for the funding of various capital projects as part of the installment purchase type plan, authorizing the city administrator to prescribe the form and details of the bonds. We good? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Earwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
I support the projects, but not the process. I'm a no.
Miss Albert,
Based on my statements that I made, I'm a no.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, let's move to items of new business this evening. We'll proceed when folks have had a chance to leave if they wish. Council, let's proceed to new business this evening. The first of which is the first reading of ordinance number 15-2024. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of certain properties owned by Brian Fowler, Greg Taylor, et cetera, custodian, FBO, Gregory Taylor, IRA, located on North Main Street and Wildwood Drive, from a DRD to a traditional neighborhood. Ms. Cotty joins us for that conversation.
Thank you. So this is a rezoning request for 3 parcels totaling 0.81 acres located on North Main. Here's an aerial view of the properties. The current zoning district is DRD, Design Review District. It did go through a rezoning last year in order to try and do 6 townhomes. The applicant has indicated that didn't work out, so he is wanting to go back to the zoning that it was before, which was R5, which at this point now with the UDO new zoning is traditional neighborhood. So these are the current zoning. Again, it is adjacent to C3. It's just north of the Wade-Hampton intersection. The future land use map calls for traditional neighborhood, and this is a current view of the properties. Surrounding land uses are residential. It is adjacent to C3, which is a medical office. The comprehensive plan does call for traditional neighborhood, so it is compatible. Staff recommends approval, and Planning Commission held a public hearing on March 18th, and they recommended approval as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Record will indicate no. For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion.
What is I think the DRD was, they were going to do that for, you just said, because they wanted to do townhomes.
Yes, 6 units.
Six
That's what
units.
it's currently zoned for.
Okay, so we have 3 lots, right? Could they, in the traditional neighborhood definition, this property could be light commercial, right, that supports the neighborhood, is that right?
Yes, there are some commercial uses that are
Right,
allowed in
that support-
traditional
okay.
neighborhood, yes.
And it also allows the construction of a duplex?
Yes,
Okay,
and
so
actually
what-
townhomes as well, if they wanted to.
Okay, so it's just a much broader zoning then, right?
Correct. At the time, we didn't have
Okay, so.
zoning districts that allowed for townhomes, so they
Yeah.
did do a very specific DRD.
On the traditional neighborhood, which I like the idea of having businesses inside neighborhoods that support the neighborhood. Do we define those, or is that something that let's say they want to do a liquor store on part of this? With this zoning, does that automatically allow that?
Let me check. So, I mean, there are a few uses that are allowed in traditional neighborhood. Liquor store is not. Let's see. Neighborhood retail with a maximum of 10,000 square feet would be permitted.
Well, that would be retail, right? That's big.
It would, but we do specifically call out a liquor store as a separate use, and it does have a not permitted. And then professional office would be allowed by right. Bed and breakfast would be allowed by special exception. Pharmacy, bank would be allowed. Social services or schools would be special exceptions.
Grocery store?
If it were small, if it were less than 10,000 square feet, yes.
Doesn't seem like any, those kind of out-of-the-way construction projects would take place on this lot. If I remember correctly, this comes right off of 14, and the
It's a pretty
slope
big
is
drop.
substantial, and it takes
Yes.
up a majority of the front of the lot. And do you know what type of issues that they ran into trying to develop this?
I don't. They got through all the way through the site development plan. And I guess doing the private driveway and road and stormwater facilities, they indicated that it wasn't financially viable.
Were we requiring them to put in some type of catchment or basin or?
Yeah, there was a stormwater facility required with the site plan for those 6 townhome units. And it did require a private drive off Wildwood as well
I would
for
think-
rear loading.
I think that probably had more to do with it than anything.
Yes. That is what the applicant indicated at Planning Commission.
Okay.
So they will, if granted the rezoning, they are planning to have 1 detached home per lot. They already have one curb cut on North Main. DOT has said they would allow one additional, and then the third one would be accessed off Wildwood. So,
Others? Discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis.
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, let's move to the second item, which is the first reading of ordinance number 16-2024. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of a certain property owned by Claudia C. Ormilio and Andreas Ramirez located at 107 Mimosa Drive from medium-density residential to office professional. Ms. Gotti.
yes, so this is a rezoning request for one parcel. It is at the intersection of Burgess Street and Mimosa Drive. This is an aerial view of the property. This is current zoning, so again, it is currently medium-density residential. It is adjacent to office professional in the blue, and then the green that you see is commercial. Future land use does call for traditional neighborhood, which again, as Councilmember Arrowood mentioned, does allow for small neighborhood retail and office that blends in with the neighborhood, so it is a consistent use. And then this is the current street view of the property. The applicant has indicated that they intend to convert the existing residential structure into an office for counseling therapy. The surrounding land uses are commercial, medical offices, vacant, and residential. Again, it is consistent with the comprehensive plan future land use map of traditional neighborhood. Staff recommends approval, and Planning Commission held a public hearing on March 18th and also recommend approval. Happy to answer any questions.
By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Record will indicate no. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
I'll second.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis.
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Move to the third item before us this evening, the first reading of ordinance number 17-2024. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of a certain property owned by Adela Garcia located at 600 Hampton Road from MD to TN. Ms. Cotty.
Thank you. This is another rezoning request for one parcel from medium-density residential to traditional neighborhood. This is located at the corner of Delagrave Street and Hampton Road. You can see the aerial on the screen. As far as current zoning goes, it is medium density, which is the same color as the 604 beside it. It is adjacent to commercial and then traditional neighborhood. The future land use map calls for traditional neighborhood, so it is consistent. And then here is a current street view of the property. So I'm going to go back to the aerial. So the intention is this lot with the existing home, they also own the parcel to the south of it, and they would like to subdivide those properties, and they want to kind of make those equal size lots and give the excess to the existing lot with the home on it. But we cannot split zone properties. So both of these properties need to be zoned the same in order to do any kind of recombination of those lots. So that is their intent at this point. And, again, adjacent properties are commercial, multifamily apartments, vacant, as well as a parking lot. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Staff recommendation was approval, and Planning Commission held a public hearing on March 18th and also recommended approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, ma'am. For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions?
It's not in regard to this, but did we not rezone or on the, when you go back, when you're going down Delagrave and that runs into
Laura?
Laura, did we not do take some action on this parcel behind there that they were going to do some kind of redevelopment?
Yes, so it doesn't include this parcel, but it does include 608A and that space adjacent to it.
No, I'm talking about what's at the rear of that. I thought that there was some kind of residential component going in.
Yes, so, yeah, and 150 is not part of it, but just to the south of it is a multifamily, one-story DRD. Believe it was 90 units, but yeah, it was a DRD project. They've gone through site plan approval, and they do have their grading permit, but I don't believe they've started. But it is a one-story multifamily development. It's kind of micro units.
I will say they have started.
Oh, have they? Oh,
Yeah,
great.
They've got the pond in and everything.
Okay.
The weather held them up a little bit, I think. Others? Comments? Questions? Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. First reading of ordinance number 18-2024. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of certain properties owned by Swafford Properties LLC located on Farmers Circle by 100% petition and to establish a zoning classification of ML for said properties. Ms. Cotty?
Yes, so this is an annexation request for two properties. Swafford Trucking owns the two properties to the north, and this is the aerial view of those two properties. This is the current zoning map. Again, with the new UDO zoning, both of those parcels to the north are now manufacturing and logistics, which is what this zoning would also be. And then future land use calls for mixed employment. And then this is an aerial view of the current property. Surrounding land uses are industrial as well as one residential property. The property is currently being used for truck storage. It's my understanding that they'd like to annex in to combine with their existing to simplify taxes, business license, services, et cetera. And staff recommendation is approval, and Planning Commission public hearing is scheduled for April 15th.
For the purpose of further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second.
By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us? Thank you. Are you available for questions should they arise? Okay, thank you. We appreciate you hanging around. With that, the floor is open for discussion. Oh, wait a minute. I guess we need a motion, don't we? Oh, we got one. Okay, floor is open for discussion. Comments?
So apparently, some of the property out there is already in the city?
Yes, the two parcels to the north are already in the city, and they are both owned by Swafford as well. Mm-hmm.
Others? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis.
Yes.
Ms. Albert.
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
We're the patient people.
Let's move to the fifth item this evening, which is the first reading of ordinance number 19-2024. This is a 13th supplemental ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of the City of Greer, South Carolina combined utility system revenue bonds in one or more series in the aggregate principal amount not exceeding $21,700,000, authorizing the mayor or city administrator and the chairman or general manager of the Greer Commission of Public Works to determine certain matters with respect to the bonds, prescribing the form and details of the bonds and other matters relating thereto. Mr. Richards bravely joins us this evening as we talk about bonding.
I don't even remember why I'm here, but
And the floor is yours, sir.
Greer CPW is seeking approval of these bonds, as you mentioned. We have 3 natural gas projects that we would like to do with these proceeds. I think you mentioned the not to exceed is 21.7 million. All of the projects that we'll be working on, if this is approved, are with the natural gas, increasing our transmission capacity so we can serve just what you've been talking about, the growing need. Just a quick example, this past winter, I don't remember the date, on an hourly basis, we flowed around 2,050 decatherms in 1 hour. Our total capacity is 2,200 and something in an hour. So we really need to get this done and be able to supply the customers that we have coming in, just like the city council does.
Thank you, sir. For the purpose of discussion and questions of Mr. Richard, I'll entertain a motion that the first reading of ordinance number 19-2024 be received.
So moved.
Second.
And second, floor is open for discussion. Questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got a few. One, has anybody ever told you you could pass for Tony Langford's brother or? He looks just like him, don't he? Anyway.
I don't know who that is.
You ought to know him. He's a good guy. Langford Electric right down here.
Okay.
A couple of things that aren't related to the bond, but I did want to bring them up because we really don't have any other method to get these answers, and I've had a lot of people ask me about it. Over time, and I believe it's under your leadership, the CPW has, I'm assuming, reduced the number of employees that CPW has.
That is correct.
And you subcontract out like your line maintenance, stuff like that, right? Is that correct?
Well, we still have pretty much the same number of linemen, but yes, we subcontract out most of all the new construction that we do. In the maintenance of the facilities, we pretty much do ourselves, and if we're overloaded, we'll still use some of those contractors. That is correct.
Well, then that begs the question, why was it this purely a financial reason?
Mr. Airwood, I
think it's very
appreciate
appropriate.
the line of questioning, but this is not. We've read an ordinance in regards to bonding, and I don't think this is a precedent that we want to set at this point. I think we need to keep our comments to the ordinance that is before us.
And I can see your point, but I disagree, because what we're doing is we are giving the city's word that if something happened, we're backing this debt. So I think that any question is appropriate. I'll go to my last two questions then. Because the questions I had was pertaining to the city and how it affected citizens and employment and things like that. But as we are backing this debt for these projects, what is CPW doing to work hand in hand with the city to develop a plan that not only benefits CPW but its citizens? Is there anything in place for that?
I mean, you'll have to be a little bit more specific
Like,
in what you mean.
like strategic plans, long-term plans. I mean, is there any group from CPW working with the city from anything? Okay, we think that we're going to have a lot of growth here.
Like strategic planning, see where we need to go, that kind of thing?
Yes.
No, but we do meet on occasion, I don't want to say on a monthly or even semi-annual basis, but Andy and I have met with his staff and my staff on certain projects that impacted both of us. But if you're talking about a formal process where we get together every year or every whatever, we don't have that, no.
Council, I'm gonna draw the line at this. I don't think this line of questioning is appropriate
Well, I
for
totally
for an ordinance. I think if we want to pursue this, we can ask Mr. Richard or his staff to return for questioning or for a conversation with council, or we can do it in a workshop before a meeting or at a meeting, either one.
Well, that's fine. I'm just saying we're putting the city's name, our taxpayers' name, behind this debt. And if we're doing that, then they ought to be able to answer the questions that affect our citizens. Because the citizens are basically saying, yeah, we're going to give them the authority.
Well, we are already backing their debt.
I know it. We're backing more debt.
Well, we do that.
No, we just don't do that.
If the system failed for any reason, we're going to back that debt.
That's exactly right. And what we're doing is agreeing to this debt.
So the issue before us is whether or not we're going to agree to the debt tonight.
Okay.
All right? So we've got the first reading of ordinance number 19-2024. Are there questions pertaining to the ascribed amount that they would like to borrow?
Mr. Richard, you mentioned the capacity, current capacity, and needing to expand that capacity.
Mm-hmm.
What will these projects allow you to expand that capacity?
Well, namely the very first one, which is the lime and gas transmission system, and it's a new gas tap, which basically what I'm trying to say is we're going to tap into the pipeline again. We've got a total of 3 gate stations. We've got one that's up just a little south of Lyman. We've got one in Crescent, which is just a little northwest of Woodruff. And those are our 2 gas taps from Transco, the national gas pipeline. And we're looking to add another. The others are more upgrades to be able to have higher capacity in those lines, especially the Highway 101. Those are, and it's not a continuous section that we have to do, but in those areas, we'll be doing some work to allow that to be upgraded for allow greater capacity.
Thank you.
And I mean, if also, I know, Mayor, that you didn't want to talk about this, but if there's a concern about us failing, let me tell you what our debt balance is right now and, you know, what it has been in the past. So if that would make anything better, or if you just want to move on.
If you want me,
Our debt balance as we speak is $42.78 million. And it's been in the 80s before. So we've paid the debt down. But this is one, these projects are 50, 60-year projects, and we didn't want to have to ask our current ratepayers to take the burden of paying that where it needs to be spread out for the life of the project. So that's actually what we're trying to do with this.
Other questions in regards to ordinance number 19-2024?
I got one quick question. I know at the State House, the speaker introduced some bills around natural gas and offering incentives for economic development opportunities. Is some of this kind of foresight to some of the things that's happening in Columbia?
Yes, and I don't believe, well, I know what you're talking about. I don't know that those really pertain to us, though, as a municipal utility. I may be mistaken. It's just that, we're topping out. I mean, it's not slowing down. The natural gas is also our fastest growing utility. They're all fast growing, but this one actually adds more customers than anything else. And we actually had to turn was it a concrete plant down because we just didn't have the capacity. They were going to need so much that we could not serve them. So we don't like being in that position.
Well, while y'all are here, I just want to thank you for the great utility service you provide. I've lived in my house since 2004, and I think my power has been off total less than a day that entire time. So we appreciate all the services that you provide. And had a little hiccup. I think my meter was changed out recently, and I bring this up because Mark's here, and I've reached out to him, and he was very responsive and helpful to get that problem alleviated. So just appreciate the service that you provide and what you do for the citizens of Greer. Thank you.
Thank you.
First reading of ordinance number 19-2024. Questions? Comments? Discussion? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
If I can't do my due diligence for our citizens, this is strong no.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Any other items? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other items of business before we consider executive session?
Mr. Mayor, I mentioned it earlier. I would like at some upcoming council meeting that we have an agenda item where we can discuss an ordinance or maybe two ordinances that would require us to work with our strategic plan, either bringing it up to date or scrapping what we've got and just starting over. And in combination or by itself, an ordinance where we would be briefed by staff on things, for instance, the action we took tonight on the bonding. We said there's going to be ways that we are going to pay for it that may enable us to reduce taxes. I think it would be wise that we look at when all of this, when it's online, that, okay, yeah, we're receiving these dollars, we're going to be able, if you want to, roll taxes back, that kind of thing. And it's not just for this, it's for every ordinance where we say there's going to be a savings, there is, or whether it's dollars, time, efficiency, whatever. I think that we need to be looking at what we said we were going to try to accomplish, and if we aren't, let's change it. If we are, hey, let's do it again. And the example I've always used is years ago, if you remember, when the state said, we're not going to have any more teenage bus drivers. And I think part of the reason was safety. Well, we don't know if that worked or if it did not work. It's just that we don't have those drivers anymore. And so it would be good for anything that we base that kind of thought on, that we get updated on it to see if it is working. And unless council objects, I'd like it to be, doesn't have to be the next meeting, but and it would be just purely discussion so we could give some good direction to staff. And then ordinance be brought back for 2 readings at that point.
For your consideration. Council, in executive session, we've got a contractual matter.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we enter into executive session to discuss a contractual matter pertaining to Project Ridge as allowed by state statute, section 30-470A2.
Comes as a motion to hear a second.
Second.
Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis.
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes.